Hello VC, good morning. I'm here again out in the studio, drinking a nice chaga and birch blueberry ginger gin. Delicious. Behind me, a couple of smaller works that I've been working on over the last couple days. And in this installment of Classical Record Shopping in LA, I want to talk about a place called Record Surplus. It's on the west side, kind of like Santa Monica and Centinela. And I don't go there a lot. It's kind of a bitch to get to the west side from where I live. You either have to go over the hill into Malibu and then take PCH up, or go 101 to the 405 to the 10, which is like just one of the biggest tortures in all of Los Angeles. But I really like this place. It's generally pretty cheap. And if I had to say, I think they specialize more in early music, chamber music, and then they have a pretty good selection of like modern avant-garde, but not a lot of the like war horses in the middle. There's always tons of Das Alte Werk, Archive, Harmonia Mundi, that kind of stuff. And for some reason on the day I went there, they were having some kind of sale. I think it was 50% off, maybe 40% off everything. And I got a pretty good stack, really good stuff. So let's just start checking it out. This first one, His Master's Voice. This is Prokofiev, the Classical Symphony, or Symphony No. 1, and Shostakovich Symphony No. 1 by Ephraim Kurtz and the Philharmonia Orchestra. I don't really know much about Ephraim Kurtz. Beautiful looking album though, white and gold labels. The Shostakovich Symphony 1 on this is amazing. This record sounds, I would say, better than most first pressing His Master's Voice. Really stoked to find this. And like I'm saying, the artwork in these very original HMVs, I really like a lot. It just looks so classic. And then here's another one from kind of the same period that I just pulled off the shelf that has super classical artwork. This is also white and gold label. This next one is really classic recording if you can get the first pressing, which also costs a fortune. This is Michelangeli with the Philharmonia Orchestra and Grassis, Ravel Piano Concerto in G major, and Rachmaninoff Piano Concerto No. 4. And this is on a HMV Concert Classics, which has like the blue postage stamp. Doesn't have the same stamper numbers, not the same metalwork as the original, but this album sounds fantastic. And you know, don't sleep on the concert classics. I have some that sound amazing, and some people even like to say that these later 70s pressings or late 60s pressings maybe even sound better than the originals, with the technology and the pressing and maybe on a better vinyl. I'm not sure that's true, but a few of them that I have really sound fantastic. Here's another version of Prokofiev Symphony No. 1 and Symphony No. 3. This is Abato LSO, just a London narrow band. Got the promo sticker there. Nothing super amazing, but a really nice sounding record, nice performance. This next one is a box set I've actually been looking for a long time. I'm not going to read everything that's on here, but this is Yevgeny Mravinsky and the Leningrad Philharmonic Orchestra at the Vienna Festival. This was recorded live in 1978 in Vienna by the Melodia recording team, but then pressed in the UK at His Master's Voice. And these are all on this label, the joint Melodia HMV. And this has Schubert Symphony 8, Brahms Symphony 2, Tchaikovsky Symphony 5, Shostakovich 5. I've listened to the Tchaikovsky and the Shostakovich, and they're both incredible, both performance-wise. Because there's not a lot of examples from this era of albums that sound good, that come from Melodia and are actually Russian orchestras and Russian conductors performing Russian repertoire. And this one, the box is a little beat up here. It's got a little bump here, but the records inside looked basically unplayed. So stoked to have found this. This next one is some chamber music there on Das Alte Werk. And this is Bach's Brandenburg Concertos 1 through 6 with the Concertus Musicus Wien with Nicholas Harnoncourt. And I think Harnoncourt is kind of a controversial figure. I think people love him or hate him. I love him. I think he's like just a blistering genius weirdo. Almost like, I don't know, like a Salvador Dali of conductors. If you go on YouTube, you can see many videos of him in rehearsal with his group, and just the way he conducts the rehearsals and his interpretations of like every minute detail of every instrument in there. It's like, I mean, I'm not even necessarily sure this is how Bach intended this to sound, but it's definitely how Nicholas Harnoncourt wanted it to sound. And if you've never heard him, check it out. It's all period instruments. Beautiful stuff to me. This album is some chamber pieces by Stravinsky on L'Oiseau Lyre with Colin Davis and the English Chamber Orchestra. And this record sounds fantastic. This is a period of Stravinsky pieces that I like very much. They're modern, somewhat avant-garde, but they're still really tonal. And there are moments of like great beauty in here and liveliness. You know, there's really nice passages of just snappy strings and kind of floating flutes and woodwinds and stuff. It's kind of whimsical in parts. So it has the Dumbarton Oaks, Dances Concertantes, and the Concerto in G for strings. Really killer sounding record. This record is a classic, long audiophile classic. This is Michael Rabin doing Paganini Concerto No. 1 in D major. So this is a Testament version, and it says EMI, but this is actually a Capitol release. It was always a Capitol release, and that's the one that goes for hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And then the label that they recreated is like a Capitol label with an EMI in the center. And I guess it was released on EMI in Europe, so maybe contractually somehow they had to call it an EMI record and not a Capitol one. I've never heard the original, but this is just fantastic, like total audiophile, classical, violin soloist, huge sound, huge string tone, big percussion and bass drum, but not so big that it just overpowers everything. It blends in, but it's really thumpy. And the recording itself is like very up close, like where the conductor would stand, but almost even closer, like you're in the orchestra. Really great listen. Really like blistering interpretation of the Paganini as well. And speaking of Paganini, this next record is Concerto 2 by Paganini and the Saint-Saëns Concerto No. 1 in A major. This is Ruggiero Ricci with Max Rudolph and Cincinnati Symphony Orchestra. Ruggiero Ricci, I like him very much. I have a lot of his records on Decca. This is also Decca, but this is the American Decca from the Gold Label series. This has nothing to do with English Decca or London Records or anything. And for years and years, I really avoided this label. I just never grabbed any of them. I don't know anything about it. I know some of them go for good money or whatever. And this album sounds fantastic. Like, it really makes me rethink these Gold Label records. And actually on Discogs the other day, I saw a couple Bruckner on this Decca Gold Label, and they were cheap, so I just ordered them, but I haven't listened to them yet. And Ruggiero Ricci is just kind of like Paganini. He's very flashy, total showman. He was a child prodigy, and his actual name was Woodrow Wilson Rich, and his parents changed his name to Ruggiero Ricci. They thought that would be more show business-like for a child prodigy. And also, he wasn't even as young as they claimed. I think they discovered later on that he was actually like 2 or 3 years older than he was claiming to be. So, all goes with the territory and that sort of Paganini tradition of just kind of rock star violin player, but amazing, blistering virtuoso. This record is one that I believe is on the Arthur Salvatore list. This is on Argo. This is Musgrave's Clarinet Concerto with Gervais Despailler playing clarinet in the LSO, and also Banks' Concerto for Horn and Orchestra with Barry Tuckwell playing horn. This is modern, sounds fantastic. Really, like, the space between everything is really huge, huge sound stage, great percussion. You can really hear everything in there. And audiophile record, somewhat sought after. I think I found this there for $10 or something, so I probably ended up paying $5 for it. Great sounding record. Again, it's like, it's modern, but it's not fully into the avant-garde, into just 12-tone chromatic noise, you know, it's still tuneful. And I also found it really cool to hear Gervais Despailler playing the clarinet on these modern pieces, because I have other records, I think on L'Oiseau Lyre, of him playing, you know, Bach chamber pieces and other sort of Baroque recordings, and same with Barry Tuckwell for that matter. And I think it's interesting to see certain soloists kind of run that whole gamut, you know, early music to Baroque to like very modern, and just see what stylistically they give to each genre. Highly recommend this record if you find it. Next, Mozart, the Four Horn Concertos. This is again with Barry Tuckwell, Academy of St. Martin in the Fields, Neville Mariner. Nice record, postage stamp, EMI. This next album, I wasn't really familiar with this piece. This is Harmonimes, I guess how you pronounce it, I don't know. By Haydn. This is on Argo with the choir of St. John's College, Cambridge, and Academy of St. Martin of the Fields, Neville Mariner. It says directed by George Guest. I assume he's conducting the choir. I don't really listen to or collect or anything Haydn's vocal music. It's not my favorite. I much more prefer his instrumental works. But pretty much anything on Argo with a cast like this, I'll just pick up, and it's a few dollars. And surprisingly, I really, really enjoy this album. This record, a classic, Sanchesky Records reissue. This is Berlioz's Symphonie Fantastique with the Royal Philharmonic, Massimo Freccia conductor. Really, really sonically great sounding record, impressing. I probably will do a comparison of all the versions I have of Symphonie Fantastique just for fun. This one would be up there, I think. But I think they're all up there in sound quality, and that's why everyone loves it so much. Next, another album on Argo with Neville Mariner, Academy of St. Martin in the Fields. This has Prokofiev's Visions Fugitives and Walton's Sonata for Strings. And this really, really blew me away at how beautiful the string tone was on this record. And it also kind of skirts in between the romantic and the modern. This Walton piece is really modern from what I've heard of Walton. And it was really great to hear him playing such artsy, avant-garde kind of music. I had never heard this piece by him before, and I would highly recommend this album, and that Walton Sonata for Strings is incredible. You know, and I would like to say about those Argo records and Neville Mariner and St. Martin of the Fields. I really like those, and I realized that when I first really started listening to classical music, I listened to the radio a lot at nighttime, and you know, Jim Schweda had his show, and I just feel like he played so much Neville Mariner, St. Martin of the Fields. It's like, when I say that, it's like I can hear his voice in my head saying it. When I was in high school, I was just so completely an autodidact. I was just reading constantly. I would read every night, everything, you know, Hemingway, Camus, Sartre. I read everything by Henry Miller, William Burroughs, all of that stuff, Paul Bowles, things that were kind of new at that time as well, you know, Bret Easton Ellis, Kathy Acker. All the old French stuff, Baudelaire, and some of my favorite stuff was coming out from Black Sparrow. And some of my favorite stuff was like John Fonte, and of course Charles Bukowski, who at the time was still alive and sort of the king of Los Angeles, you know, as far as the writing scene goes. And I just always listened to classical music on the radio because I couldn't read and have anything with lyrics. So it kind of started out, I would just read every night for hours and hours and listen to music, and then I would hear pieces that I liked, and I would try and go pick those up on tape or whatever. And then, you know, Bukowski was such a fan of classical music that then I started just picking up things that he was talking about. And still to this day, a lot of those composers are my favorites, like the really heavy, intense, you know, Brahms, Sibelius, Mahler, Bruckner. Those are all my favorite works. And so I've just had like a long history with listening to classical music that started way back then. And it's interesting how you learn so much and you go through different phases, but then there's certain sections where it's like, I just like the same things that I liked when I was 15 the first time I heard them. And I just try and find better versions of them and different versions to listen to. Well, my camera turned itself off somewhere in the middle of that childhood rant. So we'll see in the edit how much of that made it. But anyhow, back to the records. This one, it's another Audiophile record that's on those lists and everything. This is Ross Thorn Symphony No. 3 and Gerhard Concerto for Orchestra, the BBC Symphony Orchestra conducted by Norman Delmar. It's also on Argo. As you can tell, just such a really great stash of Argos that were there. I love Argo. I love L'Oiseau Lyre. I love those Decca imprint labels. They all seem to share a tone that I personally really love and identify with, and just the string tone is always so warm and rich and full. It doesn't really matter if they're huge orchestral works or small chamber pieces. There's kind of a house sound between those three labels. And so I'm always looking for them. And this one I had known about for years and just never ran into one, and picked this up for like 15 bucks or something. The Gerhard especially is just sonically stunning, and also really complicated, interesting piece that I really like a lot. This one's really nice copy, like a really minty copy. Just another Audiophile Warhorse. This is Mussorgsky, Pictures at an Exhibition, with Liszt, the Huns, Orchestra Suisse Roman, Anserme. This is the London wideband blueback version of this. Sounds really amazing. That's probably another record I should shoot out to, the Pictures at an Exhibition. I think I have the Living Stereos, the SXLs. I have the MoFi version. I have a bunch of versions of that, so I'll try and give those a listen. And finally, speaking of Roberto Gerhard, this is an album I've been looking for that's been in my want list literally for years, that is also on both the Taz list and the Arthur Salvatore list. This is on Decca Headline, which, if you don't know about Decca Headline, it's sort of more modern and avant-garde music, but recorded by the Decca team. Some of them are recorded by Kenneth Wilkinson. And sonically, some of the best sounding records you could ever hear. This one is Roberto Gerhard, The Plague. I just never found a clean copy of this that was affordable. And I think this one was like $70, but then with the discount, you know, maybe it became $40. And I don't think I'd ever seen one for less than $100 on Discogs for sure. And this is just in like beautiful condition, like kind of unplayed condition. It's an interesting piece. I'm sure it's not everyone's cup of tea. Like, it has a narrator and a chorus and very interesting music, and it's very play-like. But it's conducted by Antal Dorati, and I like it a lot. It's based on Camus' The Plague, and it's just kind of like a film in a way, like a modern classical film on vinyl, which sounds stunning. Like, everyone is right about how great this record sounds. Like, it will blow you away how great it sounds. If you can find a version in great condition that's affordable, would super highly recommend checking this out and giving it a listen. And that's it for my haul from Record Surplus. So that was a pretty good haul, and what probably would have been really expensive was actually pretty affordable because of the sale. And you know, when you go digging, sometimes you just get lucky. Like, that was a really nice lucky haul. Sometimes I've been to Record Surplus before and left with like one record, you know? It really just depends. And before I go, I wanted to just give a quick shout out to the Pressing Matters. He was flipping through some records the other day, and he showed this record, which is called Natsu Nabutsu, Summer Prayer. It was pressed on Japanese RCA. And it's Yasukazu Amamiya playing percussion. And this record, I actually had this in my pile of things I've been listening to. I just listened to it and then I saw that video. I've had this album for years, and sometimes people talk about albums that they use to sort of, when you get a new phono preamp or something, or a new cartridge and you want to hear it, this is a record I always put on first or close to first. I think this is the best percussion record ever, and I probably will do a video about all the percussion records I have, especially Japanese percussion. I am half Japanese, and I've been listening to Japanese percussion and traditional Japanese music like literally my whole entire life since I was a kid. And this album really is one of the best records I've ever heard in my life, and it's just a pleasure every time I listen to it. And it also has these really interesting inserts to sort of show you like the dynamics of it and the different waveforms and the pieces here. And then on the back there's some pictures of him with all of his instruments laid out, like just a huge room of percussion. And then here in these track listings, I'm sure you can't see this and there's a weird glare from the studio lights, but for each piece he lists every piece of percussion and instrument that he plays. And like this one has 47, or no, actually the instrumentation is 69 instruments. The second one has 45 instruments. The third one has 29 instruments. And there's actually a little sticker right here. It says distributed by Audio-Technica. For anyone watching, no matter what kind of music you're into, such an amazingly beautiful album. And that's that. Again, I'm in the studio, it's hot, and so I'm gonna get out of here. So, bye-bye.